The day I gave my girlfriend a brand new Rolls-Royce. My father looked at me like I had destroyed our family's name. He pointed at the front door and shouted, "If you can waste money like that, you don't belong in this house." I left with nothing. 10 years later, I returned as one of the youngest billionaires in the country. I brought him one small gift. He laughed, called it cheap, and threw it onto the floor. But the moment that box opened, the entire room fell silent. If you love emotional family dramas filled with betrayal, redemption, shocking twists, and unforgettable endings, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Now let me tell you how one small gift changed everything. His name is Adam Brooks. 10 years ago, I was just 24 years old. I wasn't rich. I wasn't famous. But I had something priceless. A dream. And the woman I loved. Her name was Emma. Emma had stood beside me through every failure. When my first business failed, she stayed. When my bank account nearly reached zero, she stayed. She believed in me. Long before anyone else did. A few years later, my technology startup suddenly took off. Within months, my company signed a contract worth millions. The first thing I bought wasn't for myself. It was for Emma. A white Rolls-Royce. Not because she asked for it. Because she had believed in me when nobody else had. The day I handed her the keys, she cried, "I would have loved you even without this." I smiled. "I know. That's exactly why you deserve it." Unfortunately, someone else witnessed the moment. My father. That evening, he stormed into my apartment. "What were you thinking?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "You spent hundreds of thousands on a woman. Have you lost your mind?" I calmly answered. "She's not just a woman. She's the person who never gave up on me." He slammed his fist onto the table. "A real man invests in family, not girlfriends." I tried explaining, but he refused to listen. Finally, he pointed toward the front door. "If you value that girl more than this family, you can leave, and don't come back." I stood there, completely shocked. "You'd throw me out over a gift," he answered coldly. "You embarrassed me. You'll understand when life humbles you." Those were the last words he said before closing the door behind me. That night, I promised myself something. I would never return until I had built a life no one could ever take away. I had no idea. That promise would eventually make me a billionaire. The next 10 years changed everything. I poured every ounce of my energy into my company. There were nights I slept on the office floor. Weeks when I barely saw daylight. Investors rejected me. Competitors laughed at me. People said my dream was impossible. But every time I wanted to quit, I remembered my father's words. "You embarrass this family." Instead of breaking me, those words became fuel. 5 years later, my software company expanded internationally. By the 7th year, we had offices in 6 countries. By the 10th, business magazines called me one of the youngest self-made billionaires in America. The same people who once ignored me now waited months just to schedule a meeting. But success never erased one thing. The empty place where my family used to be. Emma and I got married. She remained exactly the same woman I had fallen in love with. Kind, humble, loyal. One evening she asked, "Have you ever thought about your father?" I smiled sadly. "Every single day." She held my hand. "Maybe it's time." I looked at her. "You really think so?" She nodded. "Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it can change the future." Those words stayed with me. A week later, I bought a small velvet gift box. Not a flashy one, just elegant. Inside it was something incredibly rare. A flawless blue diamond that had belonged to a famous European collector. Its value wasn't measured in thousands, or even millions. It was practically priceless. I wasn't buying forgiveness. I simply wanted my father to know that despite everything, he was still my father. When we arrived at my childhood home, nothing had changed. The same porch, the same oak tree, the same front door. I knocked. A few seconds later, the The door opened. My father stared at me in complete silence. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he asked, "Adam?" I smiled softly. "It's been a long time." He invited us inside. Several relatives happened to be there for a family gathering. My uncles, my cousins, everyone looked surprised. Some congratulated me on my success. Others whispered to each other. My father stayed unusually quiet. Dinner passed awkwardly. Then I stood up. "I brought something for you." I placed the small velvet box on the table. "I know it can't erase the past, but I wanted you to have it." He looked at the tiny box, then laughed, out loud. "This." He held it between two fingers. "So the billionaire brings me a cheap little jewelry box." Several relatives chuckled. One cousin whispered, "I thought it'd at least be a new car." Another laughed. "Maybe the billionaire is finally running out of money." Even Emma looked uncomfortable, but I remained calm. My father shook his head. "I threw you out because you wasted money. And now you return with this tiny little box?" He tossed it carelessly onto the dining table. The box slid, then fell onto the hardwood floor. Everyone watched silently. He smirked. "If this is supposed to impress me, you should have stayed home." I slowly bent down, picked up the velvet box, brushed the dust from it. Then quietly looked around the room. No anger, no shouting, just one calm sentence. "You haven't even opened it yet." The laughter slowly faded. My father hesitated, then reached for the box once again. He opened the lid, and the entire room froze. My father slowly lifted the lid. The room became completely silent. Inside, resting on black velvet, was one of the rarest blue diamonds anyone there had ever seen. Its brilliance reflected across the dining room walls. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. My father stared at it in disbelief. "What is this?" I answered calmly. "It's called the Blue Aurora Diamond. It was auctioned 3 years ago. I bought it last month." My cousin quickly searched it on his phone. A few seconds later, his face turned pale. "Oh my God, this diamond is worth..." He stopped speaking. Another cousin grabbed the phone, then whispered, "Over $40 million." The entire room gasped. My father slowly looked back at me. His hands started shaking. This can't be real." I gently smiled. "It is." For nearly a full minute, nobody said a word. The same relatives who had laughed only moments earlier now couldn't even look me in the eyes. One uncle quietly muttered, "We thought it was costume jewelry." Emma simply stood beside me. She never smiled. She never celebrated. Because she knew. This moment wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about revealing the truth. My father carefully closed the box, then looked at me. "Why? After everything I did, why would you bring me something like this?" I took a slow breath. "Because Mom taught me something before she died." He frowned. I continued. "She said, never let someone else's bitterness decide what kind of person you become. I almost hated you. For years. But hate would have made me exactly like the man who threw his own son out. So I chose something different. I chose peace." Tears slowly filled my father's eyes. "I don't deserve this." I nodded. "I know. I didn't bring it because you deserved it. I brought it because you're still my father." The room fell silent again. Then, something happened I had never imagined. My father stood up, walked around the table, and for the first time in my entire adult life, he hugged me. Not the quick handshake kind of hug. A real hug. His shoulders trembled. "I'm sorry. I was jealous. I couldn't admit my son had become greater than me. I thought money would teach you responsibility. But all I taught you was pain," I quietly answered. "It did teach me something." He looked at me. "It taught me exactly who I never wanted to become." My father carefully picked up the diamond box again. Then, to everyone's surprise, he placed it back into my hands. "I can't accept this." I looked confused. "You don't want it?" He smiled through tears. "No. The greatest gift you brought today was another chance to call you my son. I've already received more than I deserve." A few weeks later, my father sold the old family house. Not because he needed money, because too many painful memories lived there. Instead, I built him a beautiful home overlooking a quiet lake. Simple, peaceful, exactly the kind of place my mother had always dreamed of. This time he accepted, not as charity, but as love. Months later, during the opening of my company's newest headquarters, a reporter asked, "What motivated you to become successful?" Everyone expected me to talk about business, investments, hard work. Instead, I smiled. "The day my father threw me out." The audience looked surprised. I continued, "If that door had never closed, I might never have found the courage to build my own. Today, that blue diamond still sits in a secure vault. Not because it's valuable, but because it reminds both of us that forgiveness is worth more than fortune. Money can buy luxury, success can buy respect, but only forgiveness can rebuild a family. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes love is stronger than pride. And always remember, the most priceless gift isn't made of diamonds. It's the courage to forgive when you have every reason not to. The end.